Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into something really vital, but maybe a bit overlooked: congressional committees.
Yeah, definitely overlooked sometimes.
Right. They don't always make the front page, but these groups are, well, they're like the hidden architects shaping so much taxes, defense, you name it.
That's a great way to put it. And our mission here today is really to pull back that curtain. We want to unpack what these committees are, why they matter so much, and maybe highlight some of the really key ones.
And show how much power they actually wield behind the scenes.
Exactly. It's frankly quite surprising just how much legislative clout is concentrated there.
Okay, so let's start there. What is a congressional committee? I think for a lot of folks, maybe even me sometimes, it's a bit fuzzy. Is there a common misconception?
I think the biggest one is seeing them as just, bureaucratic steps. Red tape.
Right, just another hurdle.
Yeah, but there's so much more. They're really these specialized workshops, almost like mini task forces within both the House and the Senate.
Mini task forces, I like that.
They have to exist, really. Think about it. Thousands of bills, complex issues like healthcare, climate policy, national security. How else could Congress possibly manage it all?
It would be chaos.
Utter chaos. So committees allow lawmakers to specialize, to really dig deep into specific areas. It's about efficiency, but also expertise.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. You need that focus. So if they're the workhorses, are there different kinds? I heard there are roughly 4 main types.
That's right. 4 main categories, and they function pretty differently. First, you have standing committees.
Standing.
These are the permanent ones focused on ongoing issues. Think agriculture, finance, foreign relations. They do most of the day-to-day legislative work.
Gotcha. Permanent fixtures. What else?
Then you've got select committees, or sometimes called special committees. These are temporary.
Temporary. For what?
Usually created for a specific purpose, often an investigation, like looking into a major event or a particular scandal.
Okay. And the third type?
Joint committees. These have members from both the House and the Senate working together.
Ah, bicameral.
Exactly. Often focused on broader oversight or research-type functions. And finally, conference committees.
Conference, what's their job?
Their specific task is crucial: ironing out the differences between a House version and a Senate version of the same bill.
So if they pass slightly different bills, these folks have to make one version.
Precisely. It's a necessary step before a bill can actually go to the president to become law.
Okay, that framework helps a lot. Standing, select, joint, conference. Now let's dive into the specifics. Where's the real power concentrated? Let's start with the House of Representatives. Which committees there are, the heavy hitters.
Right, the House, well, several stand out. And what's interesting is how their specific roles kind of interlock.
Okay, like which ones? Give me an example.
Well, you absolutely have to start with the House Ways and Means Committee.
Ways and Means, that sounds important. Taxes?
Taxes, yes, but also tariffs, Social Security, Medicare, basically anything related to raising revenue for the government. They control the federal purse strings, as they say.
The purse strings. So if a bill involves money coming in, it probably goes through them first.
Almost certainly. Their influence is immense because they shape the tax code, which affects, well, everyone and everything.
Okay, so they handle money coming in. What about money going out?
That's the House Appropriations Committee. If Ways and Means decides how much money the government gets, Appropriations decides how it gets spent.
So they're the ones funding schools, the military, national parks, all that stuff.
Exactly. They divvy up the money allocated in the budget. Their decisions directly impact which government programs thrive, which get cut, where your tax dollars actually go. It's huge power.
Wow. Okay, Ways and Means for revenue, appropriations for spending. What else is critical in the House?
You definitely need to talk about the House Judiciary Committee.
Judiciary, so courts, laws.
Yes, and more. Constitutional issues, federal criminal law, intellectual property, and significantly, things like impeachment proceedings.
Ah, right. So they handle the really foundational legal and constitutional questions and oversight of the justice system.
Correct. They play a massive role in shaping the legal landscape and obviously in holding officials accountable, including potentially the president.
Speaking of accountability, isn't there a committee specifically for that?
There is. The House Oversight and Accountability Committee. Their main job is monitoring the executive branch.
So watching the president, government agencies, looking for waste or misconduct.
Precisely. Investigating government operations, rooting out waste, fraud, abuse. They're the main investigative body of the House, really. They hold a lot of hearings you see in the news.
Okay. One more key one in the House. I feel like there's one that controls the flow.
Ah, yes. You're thinking of the House Rules Committee.
Rules, what do they do?
They're often called the gatekeepers for the House floor.
Gatekeeper.
Yeah. Once a bill comes out of its policy committee, like Ways and Means or Judiciary, it usually has to go through rules before it can be voted on by the full House. And rules decides how it gets debated.
How it gets debated. Like how much time.
Exactly. They set the terms.
Yeah.
How long the debate will be, whether any amendments can be offered on the floor, things like that.
Yeah.
They can make it easy for a bill to pass or very, very difficult.
So they have immense procedural power. They can shape the outcome just by setting the rules of the game.
Absolutely. It's a very powerful position, usually tightly controlled by the majority party leadership.
Okay, so these House committees, Ways and Means, Appropriations, Judiciary, Oversight, Rules, they're really shaping policy from different angles, aren't they? Taxes, spending, law, accountability, procedure.
And it directly connects to you, the listener. The taxes you pay, the government services in your community, the investigations you read about. A lot of that originates in the work or sometimes the inaction of these committees.
Right, it's not just abstract government stuff. Okay, let's shift gears. What about the Senate? Equally powerful committees over there.
Absolutely. The Senate has its own pillars, doing similar heavy lifting, but sometimes with a slightly different emphasis, given the Senate's unique roles.
Like confirmations.
Exactly. That's a big one. Which brings us straight to the Senate Judiciary Committee.
Ah, the Supreme Court hearings.
That's what they're most famous for, definitely. But they also handle confirmations for all federal judges, plus legislation related to criminal justice, antitrust, constitutional rights. They shape the entire federal judiciary.
Hugely important. What else is big in the Senate?
The Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Given the Senate's role in ratifying treaties and confirming ambassadors, this committee is central to U.S. foreign policy.
So diplomacy, treaties, foreign aid, international agreements, that's their domain.
Correct. They oversee the State Department and have a huge say in America's role on the world stage. Their hearings and decisions shape how the U.S. interacts with other countries.
Okay. And military matters.
That would be the Senate Armed Services Committee.
Makes sense. What do they cover?
Everything related to the military. The Department of Defense, weapons systems, military personnel policies, veterans affairs, overall national security strategy. They authorize the funding levels that Appropriations then acts on.
So setting the direction for national defense.
Absolutely. A very powerful committee dealing with critical issues.
Now, is there a Senate equivalent to the House Ways and Means Committee for finance?
Yes. The Senate Finance Committee. Very similar jurisdiction.
So taxes, trade, tariffs.
Right, but also major healthcare programs like Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. So huge areas of domestic policy fall under their purview. They have enormous influence over the nation's economic and social safety net policies.
Wow, taxes and healthcare and Social Security, that's massive.
It really is. And then, similar to the House having an Appropriations Committee, the Senate also needs a budget framework. That's the Senate Budget Committee.
Budget committee. So they don't allocate the specific dollars like appropriation.
No, not the specifics. They create the overall budget resolution, the blueprint. It sets the total spending levels, revenue targets, deficit levels. Think of them as the architects drawing the big plan before the appropriations folks decide exactly where the walls and windows go.
Okay, the big picture planners for spending.
Exactly. So these Senate committees, Judiciary, Foreign Relations, Armed Services, Finance, Budget, they're really driving national and international policy, shaping the country's direction in fundamental ways.
It's clear these committees in both the House and Senate are incredibly important. But let's drill down on why they are such a big deal. Why should you, listening right now, really care about, say, the Senate Finance Committee's markup session?
Because, and this is the crucial part, that's where the real work happens. Forget the floor speeches sometimes. The committee room is where legislation is truly forged or broken.
Broken how?
Well, committees review bills relevant to their area. They hold hearings, call experts, lobbyists, citizens to testify. They debate the details. They amend the bills, sometimes rewriting them completely.
So they shape the content.
They absolutely shape the content.
Yeah.
But here's the kicker. Most bills introduced in Congress never even get a vote on the floor of the House or Senate.
Never. Why not?
Because they die in committee.
Die in committee. How does that happen?
It can happen in lots of ways. A committee chair might just decide not to schedule a hearing for a bill they don't like. It just sits there.
Yeah.
Or the committee might vote it down. Or they might vote to table it, which basically puts it in limbo indefinitely.
So a bill can just disappear without a trace, almost.
Effectively, yes. Out of sight, out of mind for the public. It gets killed quietly in committee. That's where a huge amount of legislative filtering happens.
And the committee chair has a lot of power in that process, especially if they're from the majority party.
Oh, immense power. The chair largely controls the committee's agenda. They decide which bills get hearings, which topics get attention, which witnesses get called. They can champion legislation or block it entirely.
So understanding the committee process and who the chairs are is key to understanding what actually has a chance of becoming law.
Absolutely. It helps you see beyond the headlines about floor votes. You start to understand why certain bills advance and others never see the light of day. It's about grasping where the real legislative choke points and power centers are.
It really makes you think about how much influence is wielded before most people even notice a bill exists.
Exactly. It encourages a more critical look at how policy is actually made.
And we do see these committees pop up in the news sometimes, right? It's not always behind closed doors.
Oh, definitely not always. Think about recent history. The January 6th Select Committee in the House?
Right, that was huge. All those hearings, the final report.
A Select Committee investigation that absolutely dominated headlines and public attention. Trying to piece together what happened, that was committee work, front and center.
Or what about the Senate Judiciary Committee during Supreme Court nominations?
Perfect example. Those confirmation hearings are pure committee work, broadcast live, often incredibly contentious, shaping public opinion and ultimately the makeup of the highest court.
And you mentioned the House Oversight Committee earlier. They seem to be constantly launching investigations, right?
Frequently. Whether it's looking into actions by the presidential administration or waste in government agencies or corporate scandals, their investigations often generate significant news coverage and political debate.
So these examples really show that committees aren't just these quiet procedural bodies. They can be right at the heart of major national events and debates.
They absolutely are. They're where laws are drafted, oversight is conducted, and leaders are held accountable. It's not just procedural. It's often the main event.
Okay, this has been incredibly illuminating. So the big takeaway here is next time you hear that phrase, oh, that bill is stuck in committee.
You'll know what that really means.
Exactly. You'll understand the power dynamics, the potential roadblocks, and just how crucial that stage is. Committees aren't just a step in the process. In many ways, they are the process. They are the absolute backbone of American policymaking.
And maybe a final thought for you to consider. Now that you have a clearer picture of the power these committees hold, how does that change the way you might follow news about Congress or political debates? And perhaps more intriguingly, what other parts of the government, maybe less visible than even committees, might be wielding similar kinds of hidden influence, quietly shaping the policies that affect us all? Something to think about.